Hello, my name is Richard Haldiman. I'm responsible for sustainability transformation at Clariant. And over the next 15 minutes or so, I would like to introduce you to how Clariant is driving performance with safe and sustainable by design products and approaches. I'd first like to thank you all for joining this session, and I would like give special thanks to Eka that has invited us to present our journey here. So for those of you who don't know Clariant yet, Clariant is a global leader in specialty chemicals with a very broad portfolio serving very many different markets across the globe. We've categorized these markets into three different areas, into care chemicals, catalysts, and natural resources. And over the past few years, we've really noticed that in all of these different areas, sustainability is increasingly driving customer behavior as well as market dynamics, albeit maybe with different emphasis and also with different speeds. So for example, in care chemicals, customers are really looking for the overall sustainable solution with maybe a focus on safety of the chemicals. In catalysts, the markets are increasingly being driven by the need to lower their carbon footprint. And in natural resources, we're seeing a strong push towards circularity, particularly in the plastics industry. Now, we believe that this shift towards sustainability is both desirable as well as necessary if we're really going to be successful in this journey towards a sustainable future. So we also believe that those companies that are at a forefront for enabling this transition are going to really benefit from this trend. And so already a few years back, we decided to integrate sustainability in our strategy with the strategic pillar number 2, add value with sustainability. And of course, we've also added a number of challenging targets with regards to our carbon footprint with science-based targets, and we've committed to contributing to the UN Sustainability Development Goals. But what we've really determined is that sustainability on its own is not going to really make the difference. We need to bring the first two pillars together, focus on innovation and R&D and sustainability. And we've determined that these two pillars are essentially two sides of the same coin. And if you're really going to drive sustainability and create value out of that, you need to bring these two pillars together. So how are we doing this? We have integrated sustainability, hardwired sustainability into a product development process. What you see here is our innovation process called the idea to market process. And from an early stage, we really already have sustainability integrated. We use sustainability and policy trends and sustainability trends to identify opportunities to start an ideation. And then already very early on, when we're looking at potential solutions, we do an in silico screening for the toxicity of these products, making sure that we're going to identify products that have a high likelihood of being toxic already very early on, so we don't follow these leads. And then once we have sort of high-level designs of these products, we go in and we do a thorough sustainability screening. We call it the PVP R&D because it's not as detailed as the final screening, but it allows us to uncover hotspots, sustainability hotspots in these developing products so that the R&D community can make sure that they're going to address these when they finally develop the product. Before the commercialization, we could do a full sustainability screening so that we can ensure that the products are really sustainable, or that we really have a sustainability leading product. And then if that's the case, the project teams can apply for an EcoTain label for their product, showing that their products really set a sustainability standard in their respective market segments. So maybe just a few words to the sustainability screening. It's such a pivotal point, and here, unfortunately, there's no shortcuts. We have found out, and we've been actually one of the forerunners in these sustainability screenings. We developed our so-called portfolio value program already in 2012, together with external non-governmental organizations. And we have set up a process that looks at the entire life cycle of the product, looks at the impact of the products on the planet, on people, on society, and compares the performance attributes of the products to next best alternatives. And that creates then a screening process with 36 different criteria. And we have not been able to simplify this substantially. Actually, we are currently in the revision of this process to stay a step ahead of what we see as new legislation coming, new policies coming. And so we believe that we're going to stick with around 36 criteria, but we're not going to be able to reduce this. So the take-home message here is that you need to have this holistic screening, particularly to ensure that you have no regrettable substitutions, that you're not creating a product that is performing better in one area of sustainability, but really is lowering your performance in another. So I would like to show how this works with two concrete examples. The first one here is on braking fluids, and just a little bit of background on braking fluids so you understand what it's about. Braking fluids are really high-tech, high-quality, specialty chemicals. They need to comply with the highest quality standards, obviously, because they're such a vital part of making sure that when you press the brakes, that you actually stop the car. There's different categories of brake fluids. They're called DOT3, DOT4, DOT5, which essentially give sort of a performance rating. Now, if you have an anti-lock braking system, and most of the cars nowadays have, you're going to require a DOT4 category braking fluid. Now, in order to maintain the performance of this braking fluid throughout the life cycle of that braking fluid, you're going to the industry has added an ingredient, and it's called borate ester. These borate esters ensure that the performance of the brake fluid remains very high in the use phase. The problem is that borate esters are a class 2 reprotoxic material, and so you have a hazardous material to start out with, and then over the life cycle of the use of the brake fluid, they're hydrolyzed to form free borates. And free borates are a class 1 reprotoxic compound. And so you generate hazardous waste. Now, this means that you have special protection measures that need to take place when you're changing the braking fluids. You have hazardous waste that you need to take care of. And so we decided that, this really would be something that is worth taking a look at and seeing if we can improve this. And so we set out to redesign our the brake fluids that we were selling. And we came up with a new line. It's called Safebrake Life. It is the first CMR-free CMR label-free DOT4 brake fluid. And while we were already redesigning it, making sure that we're going to meet the performance attributes without the borate esters, we also looked at the other ingredients. And so we ensured that we were using readily biodegradable materials. We chose ones that have a low carbon footprint. And we ensure that there's no hazardous waste that is generated in the use phase of these materials, so that we can overall simplify the handling and the disposal process for the brake fluids. Because of all of these sustainability advantages, we awarded this product with an EcoTain label as being a sustainability leader in the class of brake fluids. It's now on the market. If you have a process like this in place, you can do this again and again and again for different processes. So the second and last example that I want to share with you is one that is addressing the challenge of microplastics. We have a broad portfolio of different additives, actually they're coatings, and we use them for very different applications. Now it turns out that these coatings are not readily biodegradable. They're not biodegradable at all, actually. And for certain applications, for example, for seed coatings, you coat the seeds, need to perform, you put them into the earth, but you don't have a biodegradable polymer. So you will be generating or potentially generating microplastics. And we see the policy trends really going into a direction where we're going to see a lot of restrictions for introducing microplastics into the environment. And so we set out to say, okay, how are we going to design new coatings that are both compatible with the requirements that we have in the market, but also biodegradable. And what we came up with is this LicoCare RBW Vita. RBW stands for rice bran wax, because we found that a side product, a side stream of the rice bran wax production that is not used for anything else, so it's not actually competing with any food chain, is capable upon upgrading to actually substitute a lot of our petro-based non-biodegradable coatings. And so we have been able to introduce this into many different applications now over the past 12 months, have been able to get for most of the grades an OK Compost Industrial or OK Biodegradable Soil label. And because of these benefits, it was also awarded the EcoTain label. We also got external recognition, getting the Best Sustainable Product, the ISIS Innovation Award 2020, as well as the gold level material health certificate. So again, if you can just apply this knowledge about the sustainability into your product development process, you can repeat this in many different applications and for many different products. So this brings me already to the summary, and I just want to make 3 points. Systematically integrating sustainability into your product development process really helps you to drive a transition of your portfolio towards greater sustainability. Now, a word of caution: if you want to go down that path and substitute products with products that have higher sustainability, you need to have a holistic, life cycle-based analysis of the sustainability of your products in order to ensure that you're not going to have regrettable substitutions. Also, you should be trying to use as much as possible scientific data to compare the sustainability in the different dimensions with alternative solutions. And then finally, if we're going to be successful in this journey towards a sustainable future, it's going to be mandatory that we all engage both with policymakers as well as the broader stakeholder community about the sustainability challenges that we have. And this is particularly important because sometimes in the details of policies that are well-intentioned, you see unintended consequences that actually favor regrettable substitutions. And here we need to engage with policymakers to make them aware of this, and also to propose how we might have more robust legislation for these different and very disparate challenges that we see across the many industries. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look very much forward to receiving your questions. If you can actually see me. Good. I'm just hearing that you can. Then I would
actually go to the Q&A and see if there are questions that have come in. There are questions that have come in. One of the here, Uta asks, the question is, can you share some examples of the 36 criteria that you have? Yeah, absolutely. And actually afterwards, I'm going to post a link into in this. Hi, Ganit. Could I ask you to leave the platform, Ganit, for a second? Thank you. So the fundamental philosophy of the 36 criteria is that they're grouped into 3 categories. We look at people, so the effects that chemicals have on society. We look at the performance of chemicals. Are they actually achieving a benefit in the performance of what they're intended to do? And then finally, the planet. What impact do they have on the planet? And we take a life cycle approach. So are there any risks in the sourcing of the raw materials, all the way through to are there any risks to the environment or to the health of workers in the use of these chemicals, or then finally in the end of life of the chemicals, or in the products where our chemicals end up in. And like that, we really systematically go through these different criteria, and we assess what the risk profile of our products are with regards to sustainability criteria, these sustainability criteria. Again, this is all public, so I will post a link to a more detailed description of these criteria in the chat. You can also contact us directly, and I'm happy to take that up with you in a one-to-one if you want to have more information around that. Simon Hoffmann-Durr, you mentioned that you conduct a sustainability assessment in the product development phase. In how far is this different from your product safety assessment, or is this implemented in the sustainability assessment? So my assumption of what you're asking here is, are we going through all 36 criteria in with the same level of detail that we would be doing at the end of the assessment? Since this is earlier on in the development of a product and you don't have all of the information on potentially also some of the uses of the chemical, etc., you have initial indications where it's going to be used, but you don't have, for example, also your supply chain set up yet, etc. But what we can do, so what we do is we actually select, we go through the criteria with the project teams, and we identify where we might have risks. And so for certain topics, this is more easily done. If you have renewable raw materials, you're going to have to be checking, making sure that these are actually sustainably sourced renewable raw materials. If you have metals or products that are going to be likely to have a certain toxicity profile or aquatoxicity, for example, you can also flag that early on. What you can't do is you're not going to go through and do a full life cycle assessment, for example, or also you're not going to do a product carbon footprint at this point, since you don't have enough information. Then I'll go to the next question that I have here. Intensify growth. Can this really be sustainable in a finite world with finite raw materials? Good question. Thank you very much for that. The answer to that is obviously that we have to have circular value chains, and we have to transform our linear value chains into circularity and make sure that we do this specifically for those value chains where we have scarce raw materials that are being used, and to make sure that these raw materials really are kept in usage as long as possible, and then recycled and kept in use indefinitely. And that's the only way how we're going to be able to continue to have a growth or maintain the level of prosperity that we have now without depleting the world. Let me see. You also, by the way, you also have the possibility to request joining me here and asking a question live. So if you would like to do that, you can request coming up, and then I should be able to get you onto the platform so that we can have a discussion, so that you don't only have me as a talking head here. Otherwise, I'll just continue going down the list. Julian Lau, how do you handle the necessary data crunch for safe and sustainable by design to be effective from a value chain standpoint? Suppliers falling short in terms of data inaccuracies, etc. Very good question, and this is something that we're working on very diligently currently. We have a big project in place specifically, actually, to look at our product carbon footprints, and we have signed up for the science-based targets. So that means that we're going to have to decarbonize our products and specifically the raw materials that we're using. And so we have engaged in an intense discussion with a lot of our suppliers to provide this kind of information. And one is getting the quality of the information right. That's in discussion with and educating suppliers where necessary. The other one is then the data management, getting the data from the suppliers into a system that allows you to track it then through to your end products. So in parallel, we're also working on an IT system that allows us to do that. But it's not only carbon footprints. There's a lot of different data that is required. And specifically, if you look at the chemical strategy for sustainability, we're going to have to actually view the chemicals business as providing a product, maybe a white powder or something, plus a whole slew of different informations. And so the question of how to actually manage and organize this data and ensure this transparency across the value chain is something that is a challenge that we're facing now with our colleagues in the chemical industry all over the place. I hope that answers the question. Salvatore Ricci, I hope that I pronounced your name correctly. Hi, thanks very much. Here we go with my question. Did it happen to you that some chemicals had some very high score in one section and lower scores in other ones? How did you manage that? Yes, indeed. These are trade-off discussions, and essentially what you have to do is you have to assess. Either you have legislative guidance, in which case that's obviously the minimum standard that you're going to have to comply with, and on the other hand, then they have to assess where you're going to actually allow for a lower score if a higher score in another area really outweighs it. But that's why I said that in the presentation, it's really important that you don't only focus on one or two key criteria, but you actually look at this, you look at the map of the different criteria for sustainability so that you can actually have this discussion. In many cases, we will then flag it as being a risk if it's not a legislative requirement. We'll flag certain low scores as being risks. And then these risks become part of the product development roadmap for the business to look at this and see how they might be able to tackle this in the next generation of products. So, for example, the Safebrake Life that I was talking about in the presentation is one of those examples. We've known that this is a challenge for the industry for a long time, and it became a topic that was then tackled in the R&D roadmap for that product category. And luckily, we were able to develop a product that was no longer requiring a CLP labeling. Nice to see you again. And Anna, I'm just going to call you Anna because I don't think that I can pronounce your name correctly. Do you see need to prioritize the factors you consider in developing sustainable products, e.g., as was discussed this morning, e.g., first climate neutrality, no fossil fuels, raw materials, etc.? Very good question. And I was thinking about this when I was listening to the panel discussion this morning. As I said, in our case, we believe that we actually have to have a holistic view. I think in terms of legislation and creating legislation, it is absolutely mandatory that we're going to prioritize and focus step by step on what kind of legislation needs to be implemented. I think for a company, it's important that you keep the big picture. So when the legislation actually is being developed, you're well informed, you've identified the risks of a possible legislation coming forward, and you have adjusted your product development roadmaps accordingly so you're not surprised. I see that we're now 1 minute over the time. I see that there's still also more questions. Thank you very much for all of your questions. I will propose that we actually go and answer your questions in a written form. Thank you very much. I would like to offer you, obviously, also if you have further questions, then please feel free to contact us directly. We're more than happy to engage with you, be it if you're from the legislation side, or if you're from a customer side, or if you're from the industry side. Happy for the exchange. Thank you very much again all for participating, and I wish you a great rest of the conference. Take care and bye-bye.